I saw something today that made me sick to my stomach. Morning Consult did a poll about the potential 2028 Republican presidential candidates. And the two that were leading the pack by a pretty wide margin were J.D. Vance and Donald Trump Jr. Now, because Vance is going to be Trump's VP, I have no issue with him leading the poll. I mean, that's usually the way this goes. The person who is seen as the number two is the, at least generally viewed, heir apparent to the president, and thus will presumably be the one that takes the reins after their term is up or they can't run anymore. But when I see Trump Jr., I just, I cringe, I roll my eyes, I go, really? Because it's like this. The Republicans will almost certainly, whether it's 2028 or any future cycle, never nominate someone I like. They might have a person who I can agree with on some issues. I know that with Tucker, and to an extent Ramaswamy, I do have some foreign policy agreements with them. A lot of the anti-intervention stuff, and with Rand Paul. But if I'm being objective, if I'm just taking my socialist liberal biases out of there, I can say that when you look at most of these other people, right, whether you're talking about Tucker or again Vance, these are individuals who, in a general sense, there's some, like, I can understand why people would support them, right? Vance is going to be Trump's VP. There's a trend of the vice president doing very well in polling, at least several years before the election. This was the case with Pence back when we thought he would be Trump's heir apparent, before the Republican voters got sick of him. And with Tucker, it's Tucker. He's one of the most prominent conservative voices in America at this point, period. So again, with those people, whether I like them or not, I can say, okay, I get it. I understand where they would be, doing well or whatever. But with Trump Jr., there's no other reason for him to be polling at more than 1% other than just complete, unfettered nepotism. And the United States, a lot of people don't know this, but we have just loads of political dynasties, right? Like, people often think about the Kennedys or Bushes, but there are a lot of dynasties that are current day that either have never made it to the White House or have not made it yet. They like to believe, right? Like, you have, for example, in California, right, Pat and Jerry Brown, the two governors, where the father was governor back in the 60s and lost to Reagan, and then the son was governor, who's he succeeded Reagan and then came back 20 years later to be governor again. If you go to other states, right, you go to Arkansas, you see this with Mike Huckabee and his daughter Sarah, right? Huckabee ran in 2008 and 2016 for president. He probably wants his daughter to try and get it for him, right, to fulfill his dream. Same thing with Romney, where his dad was governor of, I believe it was Michigan, and also Nixon's cabinet, and then Mitt would later run for senator against Ted Kennedy, lose that, run for governor of Massachusetts, and then run for senator of Utah. You get the idea. There are a lot of dynasties. But normally when someone is, the son of a president, for the most part, if there's like a legitimate drive by voters, like polling that shows them as a leading contender for president, it's usually having to do with them being an established entity as them, as a political figure in their own right. So with Bush 41, after he was defeated by Clinton, his two sons, George W. and Jeb, ran and were successful in their runs for governor of Texas and Florida. And when those two would later on run for president in 2000 and 2016, they were established as politicians with their own positions, with their own records, in their own right. People didn't just go, oh, well, that's the son of the president, so let me go and support him. With Trump Jr., I have never seen a single instance of him leading on a policy, of him having, like, he's literally just a younger, less charismatic, very obnoxious version of his dad. You could say the same thing about Eric. It's funny. I had a relative who predicted that back when Trump was running in 2016, that his children, his two sons in particular, would try to run for president because it's all part of that dynasty thing, right? If dad couldn't make it or did make it, let me see if I can have my go at this. Ironically enough, the only Trump child of like the adult ones, right? Like I'm not counting the like from the first marriage, right? That probably would not be that bad as a president would probably be Ivanka, and she's the one that seems to want it the least. She was the least visible of them when it came to his presidential campaign, the most recent one. She's not even going to try to have any type. It's kind of ironic that the one who seems to want it the least would probably be the best suited for it. That's a nice little twist of fate. But no, Trump Jr. is someone who has nothing going for him at all besides who his daddy is, and I really, the Republican voters have really frustrated me, right? But I'm going to say that they are not currently and not in 4 years going to just vote for someone because of who their dad was. Like I'm sure if we get to that, circus of a primary in 2028, which looks like it's going to have 20 or 30 people running in it on the Republican side and the Democratic side, you might see Trump as the sitting president at that point, presumably, say, I like Vance, but I also like my son, so I'll try to stay neutral. I don't think he would endorse Trump Jr. over his own VP. That's also a theory I have. I don't think he's that ready to give Vance the middle finger. So like even like while they're at least still in office. But yeah, it's wild to see a person who just has nothing going for them besides who they're related to be a leading contender for their party's nomination. Like that's crazy. And what's even worse is that because like I imagine sometimes how this stuff will go. I remember the whole like Trump surge back in 2015 where his main issue and the issue that has persisted as his main issue is immigration. And maybe Trump Jr. could try to take that and make it his own thing as well. But again, this goes back to the problem with a lot of these politicians. They're just empty suits. Like whether you like Trump or not, his main issue is immigration. You look at somebody like Bernie, his main issue tends to be things having to do with the working class. We'll talk about, the need for healthcare as a human right. Just my point is that like they have carved out specific paths and identities for themselves. Trump's kids have none of that. They literally exist just to benefit from the wealth and success of their dad, who in turn benefited from the wealth and success of his own father. It's just you keep climbing up the ladder and springing it down to your kids as well. And with Trump Jr., I really just don't see what he could run on that would separate him from the other contenders. Like Vance as Trump's VP would, seemingly being that, the heir apparent, which could say, hey, if you vote for me, you'll get a continuation of the last 4 amazing years under President Trump. At least if he says that, he can go, okay, look, I was close to the action. I was right there, right beside him when he made all these, important, crucial decisions. With Tucker, again, his whole series, right, his whole career as a commentator is based around, fighting the powers that be, and he can say that he likes most of what Trump did, but he wants to be more non-interventionist. I mean, the point is that these other people, whether I like them or not, and I do not, have something they can take and make their own. And I just don't see any scenario where Trump Jr. is able to do that. I think he's probably going to, by virtue of ego, right, think he can run and possibly win like his dad did. But I've seen just him speak, and I'm not impressed. I'll never forget that video he made about Sanders when he put out that book. It's okay to be angry about capitalism, and he was in that room sweating with the. He's like, Bernie. I don't even want to repeat it. It was awful. Um, he's just another product of everything that's wrong with society. Like when someone can genuinely believe that just because of who their dad is, they can be as successful as their dad. Whether you like Trump or not, Trump Senior, there is no like I'm never going to lie in terms of he's charismatic, he is distinct. When he speaks, you can tell that's him. You know that's him. He has independent career success as a media figure, from his family. I mean, he is someone who has carved out his own path in many ways, even if he started from inherited wealth. But I digress. But I don't see that with Trump Jr. Everything he does is just in service of Daddy, uh, and I don't see a path where that's going to translate to people voting for him. But I could be wrong, and I really hope I'm not like Republican voters and all the like conservatives. Again, do they really have such a limited pool of people that they just have to go with Trump's kid as their next Republican nominee, as their the supposed next leader of the conservative movement? Like, are you kidding me? Because you remember when Trump ran in 2016, one of the things against Jeb Bush is that like your dad was president, your brother was president. Why do we need three people from the same? They are literally doing the same thing the Bushes did. If Trump Jr. runs and is able to get the nomination, which I don't think he will, this is going to be just the same old problems with American society where even though there's all these different families, all these different people from different states and backgrounds and levels of wealth, it's always those same couple that just sit at the top, right? Getting tossed to us every 4 to however many years, and it's sad because as the United States gets more and more diverse, not even just talking in terms of ethnicity, but in opinion and location and again all these different things, you can only regurgitate the same couple of families over and over. The Clintons tried to do the same thing. People were trying to get Michelle Obama to run. I'm tired of it. It's the same few families just infecting everything, making it to where it's all about them. So yeah, I hope he doesn't get it. I have like, I'm not going to pretend I'm some big fan of Republican voters or Trump supporters, but I have this gut feeling, this instinctual thing that if they have to pick between Trump Jr. and Tucker Carlson and JD Vance and Katie Britt, they're going to pick any of those other three over Trump Jr. for the simple fact that they're not going to support someone because of their last name or who their parent was. That's my prediction. I could be wrong. I hope I'm not wrong because it's going to be a really like I just imagining him sitting in the Oval Office makes me and like again it makes me cringe in a way that the other conservatives don't because most of these experienced politicians, commentators, right? They have something I can carve out and go, okay, maybe this one good thing will happen here, two good things. He is just an empty suit, crappier clone of his dad. And I really am not interested in seeing the third Trump term.